Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 38 of the ES335 build. And in this episode, we're going to complete the work on the headstock for the time being by gluing the veneer to it. Okay, so after getting these inlays installed and all sanded down nicely last week, it's time to now kind of continue with this, get it cut to shape and get it installed onto the headstock. So as with all these things, the first step in this process, because I sanded it off last time, is to re-establish the centre line. And then we'll just draw the outline of the headstock. Ready for a bit of rough trimming. But before I do that, I actually want to establish something on the neck and the actual headstock that this is going to go into, because this is still way too long in this dimension. So I want to trim that back down to something more like what it's going to be when I glue it on. I'm still going to leave it a little bit long, and then we can kind of figure out the actual length it needs to be once we've got it in situ. But I know that this is far too long and it won't even go on at this size because the fingerboard's in place. So all I'm going to do is just measure from the fingerboard to the end, which is about 182 mil. So I'm going to call that about 180 mil and mark that. And that should bring me ever so slightly short of the fingerboard there. Obviously we need to cut another few millimeters off that to allow for the knot. Okay, so with that all marked out, I'm now going to ever so gently peel this off the MDF. Okay, with that cleaned up, we'll just get this to the bandsaw and quickly cut off the bulk of the excess. I'm going to keep this kind of well away from the lines for the time being, and then I can just clean it up to absolutely perfectly match the headstock shape once we've got it glued on. Well, that blade ain't going to last much longer, is it? Best get one ordered. Okay, so with that cut roughly to size, I'm going to just clamp it in position gently. To the approximate position it's going to be. So now I'm just going to measure back 6 mil from the end of the fretboard, because that is the size of the knot I'm going to use, or make rather. And because this is so difficult to see, I'm just going to put a piece of masking tape right up to that line, so I know where to cut to. Right, and I'm just going to literally whip that off on the bandsaw. I don't think there's much point in filming that. Okay, so That's starting to look something like now, but obviously I need to put a cutout in here for the truss rod adjustment. So to do that, I'm first going to square a line across at the base of the existing adjustment cutout. I'm going to stick a piece of tape over it, mark in that line, then I'm going to mark in my centre line, and then I'm just going to cut out to the shape of this hole. And there we have one nice little template. And then it's just a question of measuring how far back from the nut that is. I'm going to make that 13 millimeters, but we've already taken 6 off that end. So that gives me 7. And then it's just a matter of lining all these little lines up, and that should give us a pretty accurate representation of what we need to cut out. So once again, time to get the bench pin in play. Okay, so that's got the little access hole cut out now. It's not particularly accurate at this stage, but that's something I can clean up much better and more easily once it's actually glued in position. So now it's just a case of kind of ensuring we can get this all lined up properly and getting it glued on. Now you might be wondering what the little bit of blue tape's for. Well, we got the little star there on the headstock to remember Jim Bob the dog, who we lost recently. And on the day we lost him, the vet actually took a little sample of his fur and gave it to us in this little bottle. So underneath the little bit of blue masking tape is a few of his hairs, so that I will always have a physical part of my mate Jim Bob with me whenever I play the guitar, as well as the little star to remember him by. Call me a soppy, sentimental old git if you like, but there we go. Right, let's get some glue on the job. Okay, so we'll just let that set up overnight. We'll see how we've done in the morning. It's actually the next evening. I didn't get a chance to come down this morning, so there's absolutely no reason why this glue shouldn't be perfectly dry now. So Just start to take these clamps off. And we can see how we've done. And there we have it. I think that's looking rather nice. Quite a lot of glue squeeze out in the truss rod access, so I'm going to have to clean that out a bit better, but I kind of expected that anyway. Right, so the next thing is to get the trim router set up and clean up as much of this excess material as we can. We're not going to be able to do it all because obviously the router base is going to hit the end of the fretboard and stop us getting into these sections here, so we might just have to do a bit of handwork there, but we'll get the bulk of it. Okay, so I've got the trim router set up and I've got a very small bearing guided bit in there, and I'm just going to run that around the edge of the headstock and get this all cleaned up. I'm using quite a small cutter so that it will better follow the contours of the top of the headstock, and as I said, we're not really going to get much further than there with this. We'll have to clean those bits up probably with a file. Okay, that's looking a lot nicer, but now I just need to figure out how I'm going to clean up these two little areas here, and I think I'm just literally going to start with a half round carving file and see if I can remove some of that waste, and then probably clean it up with some sandpaper afterwards. Okay, so that's the headstock trimmed up now. I think that's looking really, really nice. But the last thing I need to do is just clean up around this opening. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do that. In fact, I think I'm just going to try and get a small sanding drum on the Dremel and see if I can clean it up with that. I was thinking of perhaps using a chisel, but I don't want to split this if I can help it. So we'll try the Dremel, see how that goes. And there, finally, we have the headstock veneer pretty much done. It's joined on really, really nicely. Obviously this all needs a lot more cleaning up, but I'm not going to tackle that just yet. I'll wait till we're much nearer the point of getting this into finish. So for all intents and purposes, that's the work on the neck done for the time being. You might think the next logical step is to get this glued into the body, but there's a couple of jobs that I need to finish off before we can do that. There's still a fair bit of sanding to do on the body, and of course we need to do the pickup routes as well. So those are the next jobs on the agenda, but I'm not going to tackle those now. I'm going to leave those till next time. So as always, like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.